gentlemen. Now, coming up, we have our first expert talk session. We have 4 exciting speakers who will be sharing about the impact of patient voice on research and healthcare. So, right. Our first speaker is Dr. Ritu Jain, the president of DEBRA Singapore and International. She also co-chairs the Ministry of Health's Agency for Care Effectiveness Consumer Panel. And in addition to her roles in NTU, she's also a member of the Open Strategic Committee. So without further ado, Dr. Ritu, please. Okay, so we are also showing, oh, no. Okay. Sorry, QR code will come later for your questions, but.
Still good morning. Hello, everyone. So as I was introduced, I'm Ritu. I'm here in my capacity as a patient advocate. And I represent people living with rare diseases, very small communities of patients. So before I start, can I have a show of hands amongst you who are patient advocates? Okay, so, and healthcare professionals? Okay, so who are the rest, I wonder? Thank you. I guess what I'm going to speak about is to highlight, so I was asked to say, what value do patients lend to research? But I'm going to speak a little bit to why engage patients in research. So a little bit of both, and I've been told I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to have to rush through 34 slides in 10 minutes. Okay, so I have to start with what's EB, and you've heard about, I'm president of DEBRA International, so what's DEBRA? It's Dystrophic Epidermolysis Bullosa Research Association, a bit of a mouthful for a condition called EB or epidermolysis bullosa. If you've heard of the butterfly children, then that's us. If you've heard of bullosa or blistering diseases or crystal skin, that's us. So what's EB? It's a group of rare diseases, not one, but it's multiple mutations. And clinicians tend to cluster us as one rare disease, EB. It's extremely fragile, and a bit of a warning for those of you who have low tolerance for graphic images. So that's my daughter's, no, that foot is of another child, but my daughter's foot used to look like this when she was little. She blisters when she walks. So any friction or trauma or shear force, including like a tug of the arm, will mean the skin will slide off in some of the mutations. EB is systemic, so it impacts multiple organs, everything, because skin's your largest organ. So inside and outside your body, your mucosa lining and the outside is impacted, including the cornea. So blinking also causes corneal tears. So apologies for this image. This is my friend's daughter, Maya. This is 2 weeks ago when she bumped her shoulder against the fence and her skin just slid off. So you can imagine the excruciating agony that patients have. This is the diversity of care for EB. I have to interpret this a little bit for you. These are the specialists that a newborn will need. And as you go down, it will be with age of life, you will need more and more. And these are the milder forms of EB, and the more severe forms of EB will need specialists, starting with palliative care. Even at birth, we start palliative care because of high mortality in certain mutations. We need speech therapists, nephrologists, cardiologists, otolaryngologists. Okay, you get the idea. That, for the nasal passages and esophageal strictures. So EB impacts everything inside and out. It's one of the most, actually, we call it the most painful disease you've never heard of. Okay, I've told you what's EB. I can move on. So you can imagine why, like many orphan disorders, EB is ignored in policy because policymakers simply don't include rare diseases in health plans. So you don't have reimbursement for drugs and devices that are considered too expensive for states to afford. And so, like in many countries, Singapore too, does not reimburse outpatient care for EB. And patients, of course, need care every single day, 365 days, all their lives. Dressings are the only way to stay safe and reduce pain and infections. So there's lack of public awareness, limited research funding, very high cost of treatment, and oversight in health policies. But worst of all, researchers simply do not, or pharmaceutical companies don't want to invest in rare disease drugs because they are not good return for investment. So they are truly orphaned. So what do? We are a global network of DEBRA. These are the DEBRAs around the world. And it is my singular honor to speak about them. As the president of DEBRA International, you can see we have nearly 50 chapters around the world. Think of a country, and it's likely to have a DEBRA. Founded in 1978, it's one of the more mature and well-organized patient organizations. And these are our logos. So how do we drive research outcomes? Because no one else is going to do it for us. We just have to take matters in our hands and do it. So, no, that sounded like the Nike logo. We just take charge. So this is what we do. We create our clinical practice guidelines because dermatologists, clinicians don't know about EB. They've probably never seen a patient with EB. So how are they going to help them? So we create our clinical practice guidelines that patients can give to dermatologists and dermatologists can use to give them the care they need. And we also have patient versions. We give grants. So I have to explain that DEBRA International is not this very rich entity, but we have certain DEBRAs like DEBRA UK, DEBRA US. They raise millions of euros, USDs. And there are some DEBRAs like Singapore, my DEBRA, where our budget is like peanuts. So and then we have different health policies. So when you have reimbursement for medication and drugs and devices, dressings, you don't have to invest in research. But if you don't, then you have to pay, your entire budget is focused on paying for patients, like in Singapore. So we do everything you can think of, including training clinicians. So these are some of the things we do. The International EB Awareness Week, we create awareness of EB. In Singapore, we're very proud. We have a Netflix documentary called Butterfly Children. That's my daughter on the left. And we support overlooked and underserved regions. That's our recently concluded conference in Egypt with more than 380 participants. So we draw attention to EB in countries and regions which don't have enough resources or awareness. That's the World Congress of Dermatology last year in Singapore. And we even support people in overlooked regions like Ukrainians in times of war. And with a huge grant from Red Cross Singapore, we were able to supply dressings and liquid nutrition and antibiotics and other medication for over 1 year. So that's what we as a patient organization do. As parents, as caregivers, this is what we do. And of course, giving dressings. That's last week. We sent these dressings to Bali and to Jakarta. So in terms of more direct support for research, we develop our clinical practice guidelines, patient guides, and we train physicians and healthcare practitioners. Amongst those, so this is just information on the clinical practice guidelines that we've published. More than 14 CPGs have been published and more than 11 patient versions. These are created by professionals in partnership with patients and published in journals like the British Journal of Dermatology or in the Orphanet Journal of Rare Diseases. So very credible platforms that we publish our research findings and our advice and guidelines on. So, of course, we also do peer-to-peer specialist training. So on the bottom left, you'll see Bandung in 2017, where we collected a group of experts from around the world, took them to Bandung and had them train clinicians and dermatologists in Bandung. So we try to do that around the world. We also upskill our patients so they can be valid, reliable, and effective partners with clinicians and researchers. So that's our U-Party training as well as our Patient Engagement 101 series to tell patients what is HTA, how can they engage in research, what should they watch out for, what are the guidelines, what are the guardrails to protect against. And moving on to really direct research initiatives. So who does research serve and what is the purpose? We believe that patient priorities are best understood by patients compared to researchers and clinicians. And we believe that clinical trials, the endpoints that are most meaningful are the ones that are relevant to patients. So we help with designing clinical trials, running them. We help with deciding the endpoints that we want to see. And so we basically think of our members not as patients, but as E by E, experts by experience. So, for example, one of the research initiatives that we are currently doing is the James Lind Alliance Priority Setting Partnership, where collectively all our members around the world will give input on what is a priority for our patients. For example, clinicians may think that we want a cure for EB. It's a debilitating disorder. So everyone wants a cure. That you ask patients and they might say, we want a cure for the itch that doesn't allow us to lead a single day which is hassle-free, a single night's peaceful sleep. So patients will say, keep the cure, give me a relief for my itch. So this is globally, we are deciding what is meaningful to our global population of experts by experience. What do they want to see in research? Similarly, we are defining the core outcome set currently for EB by subtype. So amongst all the subtypes, what are the outcomes in clinical trials that are valid and relevant to patients? So we are not working on endpoints that end up not being useful to patients and not being meaningful when a clinical trial is conducted. We are also collecting data on the burden of EB in 7 European countries. This is funded by the European Union. So working with researchers and clinicians and our experts by lived experience, what you call patients, we are collecting the socioeconomic burden of EB in 7 European countries, and we hope to scale it around the world in the coming years. We also facilitate clinical trials. So because of the small populations, our patients with who are eligible to participate in clinical trials we're running out of patients basically. So when more therapies come into the market, we don't have patients who are eligible for clinical trial because most of them are either in clinical trials or using a product that has been approved. We in EB have 2 approved therapies, one gene therapy and one ointment. So recognizing this challenge, I did a little bit of research on my desktop yesterday and on clinicaltrials.gov. Time's up. Okay. I found that most of the trials happen either in US or in Europe. But there was one Taiwanese biotech who started a clinical trial, and the results went from being Europe and US centric to actually putting Asia on the map of clinical trials. So last month I went to India, and because they were struggling to recruit patients, we started 2 new clinical trial sites. In 3 days, we confirmed 2 sites. One of them on the left in a hospital that sees 20,000 patients in 1 day, including in A&E, not just EB, but I'm talking about the general turnover. So I won't go into this, but looking at the population of the world, I know this is 2023 data, but if you look at Africa, India, China, look at the population there, more than close to 4.5. But all the clinical trials happening in Europe and US, less than 1 billion people. So where should clinical trials happen? Clearly, we can partner and enable clinical trials to happen in the regions where there are populations and there is need. I won't go into the rest of the stuff that we are doing, but I think you're pretty amazed already. So I can stop here and tell you that really the scope of the work we do in research is limitless. You think of it, we either do it or we will do it. if we realize. And in 2025, we are hoping to set up a global research consortium, and we're meeting in Ireland in 2 weeks, actually, to steer EB research and drug development. And this was a list of stuff that we planned to do, but I don't have time to go into it. But we also work with FDA and EMA in Europe and US to collect data that becomes meaningful for clinical trials and for therapeutic development. So DEBRA, I think, personifies so-called, it's not Mahatma Gandhi's words, but the world believes it is, be the change you wish to see in the world, at least in the research world. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ritu. Now, our next speaker is a perfect example of how actually having a chronic condition does not mean you are just a recipient of healthcare. So please welcome Miss Emily Tan, a dementia advocate who will share about her experience being an active research partner. Emily, please.
Okay, hi. I am actually very worried that I will not be able to be here to do the presentation because I have been very sick since last Wednesday. A series of conditions. It started with cramps all over my body, and then I start to have my asthma coming up, and then after that I have migraine. So I had to send an emergency SOS to Ling. I might not be able to make it here, but thank God that I'm here. I'm well enough to do. So first, I wear many hats, and I'm also at the WHO, the Guidelines Development Group for the Cognitive Decline. And then I'm also on the Alzheimer's Disease International Board, plus a host and list of many roles that I play. Now, why am I so busy in this is because people with cognitive decline or mild cognitive impairment or dementia hardly have the voice, and it's very much doing for rather than doing with the patients. So that is how I started my work in this advocacy. So thank you. I no need to explain the WHO because Anton just brought it up. It's all coincidence. Now, for me, is that when I started my advocacy, I actually went global in 2019, and I joined the national, what you call Dementia Alliance International. And to us, nothing about us without us is something that we carry every day in our work. And then after that, when I start to get into the research, then I found that this is not what I want. I don't want just be a participant of research to provide data for you to collect. I want to be more. I want to be part of the whole process. But I don't know how to do it because I'm just a diploma student. I don't go to university. I even don't know how research design, but I know that what I want. So I have that thirst and hunger. So I go and reach out to my global platform. And then there I learn from my peers from Ireland and then from Australia, from Canada. And that is how I start to get involved in research more than just a research participant. So PPI or depends on where you come from. Sometimes it's called patient engagement, and now it's even shorter. Now some of them is called public involvement, PI only. Yeah. So it can be is about doing with or by the people who use the services. So here are some examples of the things that I do. And so for example, in the WHO blueprint is where I get my involvement to provide the lived experience of what dementia, the blueprint for the dementia research should include. And one of the very important things that that we as a group of people with lived experience, right, we always call for the involvement. No research should be done without the involvement of people with the lived experience. Because if you just come from the clinical knowledge, you will miss out a lot of things because we are the one who are every day living with it. And that is called, then next one is the cognitive rehabilitations toolkit. Now, this is a very clear examples of how patients organization can actually work with the university and then gets the patients to be involved. And this one is actually, we are the people who do it, but because we are all people living with some form of cognitive decline, and so the researcher from the the University of Exeter actually is the one who helped the facilitations and put everything together for us because it's impossible for us to do the research all by ourselves. So this is research by the people, supported by the university. And then, of course, the funding is from Alzheimer's Society. So you might ask, Emily, why are you part of this? That is because I had to tend to COVID. Everything goes to Zoom. And then I am a very strong supporter of Linda Clay, the cognitive rehabilitation. And then I wrote to her that I actually translated her research, which is involving therapies, and I translated to use it by myself without occupational therapies. And then when they have this project, she asked me, Emily, would you want to join? But you will be the only one that is from this region and not anything to do with Alzheimer's, the Alzheimer's Society. I said, no problem with me. So that is how I get involved. So today, this toolkit is to help people with very mild stage, on how to then maintain their independence and continue on to live inside the community and carry out with their everyday lives. The next one is still an ongoing research whereby I get involved also, is a healthcare research on driving cessations and the health outcomes. So, and then this one is whereby is driven by the researcher, but I come in as one of the co-authors also. So what I'm trying to show to you is that if you want to get patients to be involved, you have to broaden your horizon and don't feel that, don't have that, what you call perception that because a person is living with certain types of medical condition, including dementia or cognitive impairment, they are not able to do it. With support, the right support, they can do so. So after my years of involvement, what is patient engagement or PPI looks to me? To me, it's about meaningful collaboration. Your patient's partner need to understand what is it that they can contribute meaningfully. It has to be very clearly lined up, stated out to them. How can they be involved? Equal partners, that is very important, especially even more so when it comes to medical condition that have some kind of a stigma, like mental health and things like that. So then the power distance means that I should feel that you and me are on the same terms and same power. I can say no easily. I can object to you. Yeah? Because there is no point in collaboration if I every time just nod my head. Then there is no partnership. There is only sitting by the table and be a good child. That is not partnership means. Expert with lived experience. That means that researcher and healthcare professional, if you want to involve patient, you have to accept that the lived experience we are the expert. Okay? So you may be medically trained, but we are the expert. Like what I told my daughter, who is also a family physician, and my son, who is my son-in-law, who is a kidney related one, urology, something like that. Yeah, I always told him that patients are the expert. You can have all the training, And then equitable partnership. This is very important. Not just provide equal partnership, because every patient come with multiple ability, multiple disability also. And you have to make sure that when you come take them in as patient partners, you must make sure that they have the right support. You cannot provide consistent support for everyone and assume that everyone can be accessible in that manner. Like for me, when I involved in any research, the PI always make sure that I am provide some additional support because of my cognitive decline. So this is what you call equitable partnership. I have to do some magic to this. How am I supposed to point? Huh? Oh, okay. Now, PPI can go wrong in many ways. When I start to involve it, then I start to realize that sometimes it's very tokenistic. I don't know about from other patients with other kind of medical condition, but when it's coming to anything to do with cognitive decline, dementia or what, or mental health, is every time is very tokenistic. We are just being put there, given a chair, and you sit there. So that is one thing. Or it can be a checklist also. The other one is unconscious bias. And not only unconscious bias, cognitive bias also have. That they just assume this is the way. And then before we open the mouth, they know exactly what we are going to say. And then they help us to summarize everything. And then we will say, no, that's not what I want to say. Yeah? Yeah. So then lack of support for fully include patient's partner. This is another fantastic thing that I learned. So they assume that everyone who live with dementia all have the same needs and same disability. And suddenly among us, we have people who have very slow processing. So for all of you who are in Singapore, you might remember the dial-up internet. So once you live with dementia, our processor go to that. Yeah. So that is what happened. So then when the people living with dementia come in, they've forgotten that there are people who have that kind of processing issue. And then there are people who are living with dementia who have aphasia, who have problems with the language. And then there are people living with dementia who have PCA, posterior cortical atrophy, whereby means that the eyes can see but cannot interpret what they see. So they don't provide all this, fully support the inclusion. So end up that, do these people have meaningful engagement? No, because half of the time or more than half of the time, they even don't know what is going on. So they cannot participate. Lack of recognizing the vulnerability. So when you engage the patients as partner, you have to always be very sensitive of the vulnerable position that the patients, when they share, when they get involved, there are times along the journey that certain research process along the way, the result or things like that, might have some kind, bring back certain memories of their own journey. So that you have to be very careful. And then this is another one that I like about it. Why? Because initially when I started to get involved in research in Singapore, in the mild cognitive impairment research, it is very much like a helicopter research, whereby the researcher will go to the department, the clinic there, so you are handpicked. And then after that, they will tell you, we want to recruit you for the research and things like that. Okay, you are very happy that you are part of that, and then you sign, the consent and things like that. That's it. You don't hear from them anymore. Yeah, so that is what you mean by helicopter research. But then, as time goes on, participant-centric movement is very strong, and then they come in. And I was at this, is it last month or what? I was at this biopsy and by Lee Kong Chen School of Medicine. I was so happy that they are sharing their, even not the final, isn't it? It's prelims result with all their participants. I had to ask, all these people, majority of the participants, the attendees for the event are who? Oh, all our research participants. oh, wow. I said, this is what I want to see. Sharing back the result is very important for the patients to know that, okay, this is what I contribute and this is what you have found. And then, of course, there is this return of individual result to research participant. How much to disclose? That is a very tricky question because if you disclose a result, because patients, when they join, then most of the time they don't know that the research finding and the research methods and even the MRI scan, whatever, compared to the normal doctor routine is very different. Yeah. So then we don't know. Then we will ask, how come when I go and see the doctor, the same research thing cannot be used anymore. Yeah. So it is very important that when you want to involve the patients, in the research, you always make it very clear and spell out what is it, and that there is a difference between the research finding and the actual thing that is on the ground, on the practicing. And then when you want to share that info, individual result finding, but always make sure that it is something that the patients can bring back and use it. There is no point to tell them something that they cannot use and then they have to worry like that. Okay? Yeah. So what is PPI? Yeah, I will have to rush up because my time is up already. So it's about sharing on the table, be on the table and have a say. And then, oops, it's not responding. Okay, this is what I mean. I'm involved at different levels depending on the subject content. Not everything I will be involved. I will involve based on what I can. And then it's very fluid also. I have to learn how to do this. Okay, the key takeaway is that medical research, it is no longer a good to have, it's a must to have, okay? And ensure diversity, inclusion, and equity. That is very important because there's no point to have the same research participant repeating in all your research. Then it's no longer inclusive and you don't have diversified. And effective communication, trust is the most important thing of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Now, something that she said that actually resonated, and it links back to actually a similar line that I've shared actually in other platforms, is that to become an advocate, you are turning your greatest weakness into your greatest strength. But to sustain as an advocate, you have to accept that your greatest strength will continue to be your greatest weakness. And this is where the power of community, power of support comes in to help you continue on. And on this note, we have Kenneth Ma, the president and co-founder of the Rare Diseases Society Singapore, to share with us more about how we can see beyond rare disorders as just the minority. Kenneth, please.
Hi, afternoon. My name is Kenneth. First of all, I'd like to thank Ling for inviting me to share. Actually, I'm also not well, having a bad cough, so you see I'm already on mask. Dr. Ritu and Emily has touched on patient engagement in research. For me, I will share a little bit more on the patient engagement in healthcare. All right, because that's our strength. Okay, what is rare diseases? I think Dr. Ritu has touched on the condition under EB, but this is a general information of how we define rare diseases globally. Okay, over in Singapore, we don't have a clear definition, but we will define it like 1 in 2,000 diagnosed with the condition, and the condition will be classified as a rare disorders. Okay, my child, Chloe, was diagnosed with a rare condition called Pompe disease. in 2010. That was 15 years ago. And she became the first in Singapore, the first patient in Singapore to be diagnosed and treated with so-called ERT, enzyme replacement therapy. Yeah. So it's very costly. Yeah. And then if you want to find out more about myself, my family, and my girl, you can actually Google savechloe.com. I created a website for her. That was my very first advocacy work that I've done. And in the website, you also can find an information paper, which I spent about 3 months to write, just to submit to the medical social worker so that I get funding. Because her first year of treatment was 90,000, and at that time was very costly as a baby. Yeah, so without much support and help, I went into the the so-called research board and wrote this information just to get the support from the hospital to get her treated. Yeah, so that's my very first journey to start my advocacy work. And then from there, I moved on to establish a charity called Rare Disorder Society Singapore. So we are now a full-fledged charity with a IPC status. So you are welcome to make donation to us. You will get tax exemption. Yeah, I promise you. Okay, the unique of rare diseases. Yeah, not many people know about us or talk about rare diseases. But imagine there are more than 7,000 rare diseases affecting like close to 400 million people in the world. So individually we are rare, but if you put everyone together, we are actually our numbers are quite big. You know about HIV, but then do you know the population of HIV patient is lesser than people diagnosed with rare conditions, rare disorders. Yeah. So there is always challenge that we face. Okay, like I have listed out, these are the challenges that we have faced. Okay, like lack of understanding, lack of diagnosis. Like some patients take more than 3 years to be diagnosed, and like my case, my daughter was diagnosed by accident. So why I put it accident? Because she was having a chest infection. So upon admission, they X-ray the lung, but by accident they discovered she has a big heart, cardiomyopathy. Yeah. So from there they do further investigation, and then I waited 2 weeks for the geneticist to come back from her overseas trip to formally diagnose my child. So that's in a way I say it's by accident. Yeah. And then there's limited treatment option available because usually for rare condition you need orphan drugs, meaning a specific kind of treatments or a specific kind of medicine to treat. So imagine to treat my daughter's condition, Pompe disease. Today she's 15 years old. She weighs about 35 kg. Her annual medical cost for the treatment is close to 500,000 a year. So that is a very, very unaffordable, ultra expensive treatments. But then should we give up? No, because every patient, every child has a right to live, right? So I think this is something that we always want to advocate for. And then how we can play a part with the healthcare. So talking about engagement, patient engagement. Last time I don't think we talked about all this. It's always the doctor who tell us what to do. But then with the wonder of internet, Google, all these things, like what Emily said, the patient are experts. So I won't dare to say I'm an expert in Pompe disease, but when the attending doctor brought the medical students to see my daughter, she always emphasized, speak to the parents, speak to the caregivers, because they are expert in this condition. Because I face my daughter 24/7. Yeah. So we actually, several years back, RDSS did a rare disease impact studies. So we actually have some numbers. Yeah, so like I mentioned, it's very costly to treat rare disease patients. And then a few years back, with the help of advocacy, with media reporting, all this, we managed to see that there is a rare disease fund introduced in Singapore to help patients with ultra expensive treatments. However, it's still work in progress, I would say, or put it this way, because there's only a handful of condition included and not all. But hopefully, as we grow this fund, we can see more and more conditions and more patients will benefit or tapping into this rare disease fund to continue with their treatments. Not forgetting, because rare disorders is most of that is genetic. So unfortunately, it doesn't come with a cure. So it's a lifelong treatment for the patients. Yeah. However, with good research, yeah, we are seeing more treatments available, or even gene therapy that can replace the defective genes. Yeah. So I would say the future is pretty bright for people living with rare diseases. Yeah. And then the one of the key issue is the struggles of the families, uh, yeah, and the patients, because we always want to talk about mental health. Yeah, because it's very the emotional burdens, the financial burdens is always something very challenging for every one of us. But I must say, we build our resilience as caregivers, as parents. Yeah, our child is our teacher, actually. Yeah. So I'd like to talk about having involvement in patient engagement. So I would see, as a patient advocacy group, we are the bridge between the uh, patient and the physicians. Okay, we are there. We can actually offer our experience. And then I think recently I attended another workshop. They talk about narrative medicine. So it's not only about talking about doctor coming in to treat my condition, but doctor have to write a story of my conditions and my families. Yeah, so that is where it give me the ideas that actually patient voice is getting more important nowadays. Yeah, and then we are the one that can amplify the patient's voice. Yeah. Okay. Patient also need educations. So as physicians, I think you are medically trained, you know the conditions. But for patient, we search everywhere for information, but some of the information may not be the correct one, but we do not know how to identify. So I think as a physician, you also need to educate your patients. Spend a little bit more time, talk to them, let them understand what are the correct informations. And then I think the ultimate aim is to have a joint decision. Make a joint decision with your patients. Yeah. Last time is like doctor say if I'm having a flu, there's nothing. Maybe you take vitamin C. Am I right? Yeah. But now if you have the experience, you can discuss with your doctor. Other than having vitamin C, what can I do? Yeah. What else can you give? Or maybe give me some Flumisil to dissolve my phlegm, something like that, because you already have some knowledge. Yeah. So it's always good to have a joint decision with your patients. Okay, these are some of the benefits that I have listed out, like why patient voice is very important. It will improve the health outcome. Yeah, I think also it can prevent doctors from practicing defensive medicine. Yeah, so I think doctors will understand what I mean by defensive medicine. Yeah, so it's always good to have a voice, for patient to have a voice, and it's also good to for doctors to see patient as partner. And then also, I would believe to be a good advocate, we also need to be trained and not just go there and bang table and say that I demand this, I demand that. I think it doesn't work that way. Yeah. So we with the patient voice, we also hope to see that we can, and with our voice, the entire healthcare system will be enhanced. Yeah, we are good, but we can make it better, right? Yeah. So just to remember, in Singapore, our 3M system is very unique. Yeah, no other place in this world have this kind of a 3M system in our healthcare, right? But then, is it the best? We don't know. But can we improve a bit? Yeah, 3M, everyone know, right? Right? Uh, MediShield Life, MediSave, MediFund. Yeah, the 3M. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So these are the things that we hope that we can improve on. Let's be a partner to the healthcare system rather than someone that always find fault with the system. Okay, these are the power of engagement with the how to be engaged, and then why we have a say and we need to have a say. Okay, so recently we also come together because there are many different support group for individual conditions. So we actually came together. We call ourselves Rare Disease United. Yeah, so these are so Julie, yeah, this Sharina, all this, and then they are also part of our group. Yeah, so together we want to come together. We talk about open voices, but in rare disease context, we want to have one voice. We want to move together. Yeah, one voice. Yeah, so it's always good to have one voice, and when it comes to engagement, it's also easier for the stakeholders to engage one voice rather than they going around to collect information from different organizations. Because ultimately, we do have some shared beneficiaries. So advocacy is very important. So yeah, so this is all this year we have been involved in doing the work, media's report, and then the best one it was actually this year. For the benefit of everyone, actually the last day of February is always the Rare Disease Day. The International Rare Disease Day will fall on the last day of February. So if there's a 29, it will be on the 29th. Yeah, so it's a unique month, right? Everyone knows. Yeah, so this year we are very fortunate because our Singapore Zoo, they have a newborn sloth. Yeah, so sloth is actually one of our annual campaign. It's called Carry Hope, and sloth is our mascot. So happen, yeah. So they have a newborn baby sloth. So being thick-skinned, we approach them. How about name this baby's Hope? So they agree. So you're welcome to visit Singapore Zoo to visit Hope. All right? Yeah, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. Okay, now our final speaker for this session, none other than Miss Ling Sim-Devadas from the Office of Patient Engagement, and she will be speaking about elevating patient voices in Singapore. Where are we now?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So glad to see all of you here today. And actually, for this topic, you've heard all of the previous speakers, right? The voices of patients have been elevated in Singapore. Don't you agree? So I think I'm done. Thank you very much. Okay, but so I think I have to spend the next 12 minutes. I'll just try and share you a bit more about what I have here. But I think they've done such a fabulous job. And basically, that's my thesis, that it's been increased, but we can do more, right? So I'm here today actually wearing a few hats. As you know, I bring patients' voices into medical research and education at LKCMedicine. But before that, I am a breast cancer survivor and a patient advocate. So 7 years ago, in November 2017, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that brought me into the heart of healthcare. I had worked in a hospital before, and I thought I know what it feels like to be a patient, but no, it was not until I was diagnosed and then had mastectomy and chemotherapy. And then I realized how vulnerable a patient would be and how different the lens of a patient would be as well. So when I completed my treatment, I became a patient advocate. And today, I am grateful to be in remission, but also grateful to be able to continue to care for my elderly parents and parents-in-law, and more importantly, to be able to work together with patient advocates in Singapore and across the world. And several of you are here today, and I got to know a number of the speakers, in fact, all the speakers that were here for this session through this work as well. So this brought me to LKCMedicine, right? And I came into LKCMedicine because the leaders of the school believes that healthcare and research exists for patients and not the other way around. And so now I enable bringing patients' voices into medical research and education. So the thing is, I wake up every morning actually feeling rather energized, only because I feel that I get to work with a lot of very inspiring patient advocates. Again, all the speakers before me and many of you who are in the room here today. And secondly, because I feel that we have an opportunity here to make a difference. And this quote here from Warren Buffett actually speaks to me, right? I can't agree more with it. And I'm sure that is the reason why for many of us here sitting in this room as well. And I would say in the last 7 years in my journey through patient advocacy and engagement in Singapore, I have seen seeds sprouting, right? And you have heard how well it has grown, right? And trees are growing. And so we've heard about some patient organizations earlier, but also within our healthcare system, right? You can see there are many actually organizations here, and some of you are represented here today, are actually involved in growing the patient's voices in various aspects in your programs. So we have, the ACE Consumer Panel by our agency, Care Effectiveness, is a HTA agency in Singapore, the Precise Consumer Panel. We have Patient Family Advisory Councils in SingHealth, NUHS, NHG, and now in LKCMedicine. But I would like to highlight actually 3 pioneers in this work. Specifically, the SingHealth Patient Advocacy Network. And because they, in 7 years ago, just about the time I was after my treatment, and I was part of that, full disclosure, yeah. They are the first patient and family advisory councils in Singapore. And I think that helped to bring together patient advocates in Singapore together to work, to network, and to grow this space together with healthcare professionals, and also to show what is possible by partnering with patients in a public healthcare setting. The second organization I would like to credit this to is actually the Center of Regulatory Excellence, CORE, at Duke NUS. And they brought together patient advocates in Singapore and in Asia in a platform to engage, to network together with patient engagement experts around the world. And third is the Agency for Care Effectiveness. That is the ACE Consumer Panel. And through the consumer panel, they made healthcare decision-making closer to patients. So they have started to open these doors. And of course, not to forget, do you know there's more than 100 patient organizations in Singapore? Quite a fair bit, right? I don't know. I don't think I finished counting. And this was like from a few years ago. Maybe we should do a mapping. We should do a proper study of that, right? But you have heard earlier from our earlier speakers how vibrant this sector is, the patient organizations, and how much they want to partner with patients. And therefore, I believe that, what we have seen here is where are we now? Actually, we're in a good space. There's increasing interest from healthcare professionals and researchers on partnering with patients in healthcare and research. More organizations have set up structures to involve patients. Sometimes in between both sides of the camp, right? And patient organizations are growing and wanting to be more involved. Overall, I would say the needle is moving and the doors for patient engagement is opening. That's where we are right now. And the fact is, patient involvement is important for Singapore's healthcare priorities. We heard earlier from the speeches and speakers earlier. And this is much important because with patients, we can then co-create solutions for some of these healthcare challenges that we face. So, where do we go from here? Simply, these are my thoughts, right? I think we all want more opportunities for patients and caregivers to be involved in medical research and education. And that's what we are here to do in Open. And I believe the reason why many of you are here in this room as well, because you want to be able to create these more opportunities. Have more patients be involved in healthcare decision-making. And finally, having structured programs for patients and caregivers to work with researchers and clinicians. And we heard earlier from Anton that this is an important area as well that we need to grow if we want to grow this space. So yes, that's where we want to go for a start. I'm sure there are other things, the list would be very long if I start listing everything, but I think these are 3 important stuff that we can start with. And so how do we get there? Now, I believe, again, my earlier speakers had already alluded to how can we get there. So I would say one of the first thing, right, is having a compass. Like where you want to go somewhere, you need a compass. And I say, what is our true north? Our true north is true patient partnership. Now, patient partnership is a term sometimes bandied about. And have we realized it? I don't know. Sometimes we have, sometimes might not, right? So, and I think that's because there are certain challenges that sometimes we meet, maybe existing current practices, systems that we have that kind of, some preventing us towards true patient partnership. But we can get there, and only if we, through the spirit of things, work through it by working together with the patient rather than to the patient or for the patient, which again, Emily had explained so well earlier. That is what is needed. So if we work with this spirit in mind, I think that will guide our path forward. Second, empowerment. And empowerment here, I would say really empowering everyone who wants to do this work. Giving patient partners, researchers, clinicians, everyone the knowledge, tools, and resources to partner with each other. And we hope through today's Patient Voices Symposium and the workshops that we are holding, it helps us to get towards this space. And finally, I put in measuring impact because we do want patient involvement to be more than just a, hey, feel good vibe thing. We don't want it to be that way. And I'm really glad that Anton has showed us earlier that it's possible to measure impact and we should be doing more of that. So that's something that we need to do because then we can convince more people to come on board and also more resources and funding, right? So these are the things that I think we need to go forward. And these are the 3 pillars, I would say, that kind of guide us in our work in the Office of Patient Engagement. So what we are all about, we are about enabling patient and public involvement in medical research and education with our researchers and educators. We are about advocating for the inclusion of patient voices. We are about partnering, not only with patient partners, but with clinicians, researchers, educators, healthcare professionals, everyone in the community. And finally, about empowering, right? Because through empowerment, through training, and other capability buildings, we can do better. So open is a whole of school approach. So we've taken a whole of school approach in LKCMedicine with open. And I would say one of the things is, you heard today we've launched the Open Voices, which is our patient partner network with 40 pioneer patient partners to start. So with this, I believe this is a key initiative for us to help to keep those doors open and wide open. That is what we aim to do. And of course, capability building, we heard so much about it, and it's critical, really critical for us to move the way forward, right? Because so that it'll help us to understand how do we realize true patient partnership, and how do we, what can we do to actualize that and understanding it, and finally, how to measure impact. So these are some stuff that we have done in Open over this year. And well, look out for our programs that we're rolling out next year, right? So akan datang, as in the Singapore term for things. Okay, so thank you very much for your support. Well, I would say, I started this presentation as saying that, I'm talking about elevating patient voices. And as we said, yeah, I think we're in a good place. Yeah, do you think so? Yeah, we're in a good place. We have started, but we can get to even a better place, right? So we are in a good place, started, doors have opened. Now where we want to go? This way. We'll open it wide open. So I would say for many of us here in this work, we know that, patient involvement is actually not a walk in the park. It is more about gardening. It's not more like gardening. Okay, so sorry, I'm not really a gardener, but I know it's a lot of hard work. It's about creating the right conditions. It is about, having, nurturing the growth, and then, of course, the thoughtful tending towards it. So let's, pick up the chanko, the spade, the watering can, and let's grow the patients' voices together. So, as in our earlier song, Better Together, we can all get better together. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Eileen. Please stay on stage. Don't go off. Yes. All right. Can I please invite back on stage Dr. Ritu, who's gonna moderate the Q&A session. We're gonna have Emily and Kenneth join us as well. Now we are running a little bit behind time, so we're gonna try and not stall their lunchtime, but we can go with maybe like a 15-minute session. That should give enough time for questions. Over to you, Ritu.
Thank you. All right, so hoping to have a conversation here rather than more questions to our speakers, which I definitely have loads of. But I really hope that this can be a conversation with all of you. So if you can send your questions through the QR code, but you're also welcome to raise a hand. That would be lovely. But otherwise, I have a whole list of questions. I promise you these are not as interesting as yours.
Okay. Hi, thank you, Ritu. So, just like to introduce myself. My name is Andrew. I'm currently unemployed. Maybe I'm just a part-time RA at NUS Salisbury Hawk School of Public Health. But I wanted to ask with regards to like patient involvement for research involving palliative care and end of life. Like what I noticed is that like when we talk about like involving patients in the research, like there will be this bound to be this difficulty if we were to engage patients who are undergoing end of life, given that they have a short lifespan and they also burdened with the things. So with that, like, what's the current state of affairs regarding like patient engagement for participatory action research in palliative care, or would you feel that like maybe caregivers might be a better angle to approaching palliative care research using this approach?
Thank you. That's such a sensitive question and certainly one very, very necessary. I'm going to ask, I can think of an amazing researcher and clinician, Dr. Okay, Paul's there, all right. Andy, is Andy here? Okay. Paul, would you like to give a response? But I will also ask our panelists. Paul, would you like to weigh in on this, given your research? Paul, come on, move up.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Paul. I am an assistant professor of psychology at NTU. So some of you may know me with regards to the work I do in palliative care, grief and bereavement. Yeah. So I think with regards to this, I think for individuals who are at that stage of life, and I think palliative physicians will also agree with me, their stories also need to be heard. Their stories are also vastly important because it does also feed into how families react after the death has occurred. So with regards to the bereavement part as well. So for end of life, it's the anticipatory grief that happens before and then post-bereavement, how the family copes. So these are two areas where I think participatory action research is really quite current. Yeah, and I think it's just sort of getting them into the frame of mind because from my experience, both patients as well as family members do want to talk about these issues. They do want to share. It's just that sometimes they feel that there is no space for their voice. Yeah, because the end of life, you know, there's this researcher, Carpenter, he said that dying is hard work. So yeah, so really, how do we make it easier, that process as well, and how is it that they can teach others? So I think really these two major points. Yeah, sorry if I rambled on a bit.
No.
I was not prepared for this question.
Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate you weighing in. I just want to add to that, you know, we were having a conversation, Magdalene and I, during the coffee break, and you were talking about how, and we face this in our rare disease communities, where patients sometimes decide they just don't want to live. And as parents, you know, we try to prolong their lives, but you have to respect the patient. So I would like to just add on to that. There is a huge element of culture here. And in certain communities, we don't talk about these sensitive topics like death and end of life. So I wonder if we could use that to segue to our panels.
Okay.
Kenneth?
Take out your phone, go to Me Watch or YouTube, search for CNA, program called Life, Unexpected. It was aired on 28 September until 4th of October. It talks about palliative care in Singapore. It features Star Pal, one of the palliative care for children living with life-limiting conditions. So my family was featured. So we talk about palliative care and during these 5 episodes, they featured several families. Some their child is already gone, and there's one particular person, a gentleman. Actually, he was living with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and at age of 39, he passed away just 2 months after filming. So it's a good program to share about what palliative is all about and how we caregivers and patients react to death, right? So it's very simple. Just watch the entire series. Yeah, you see, I'm here to promote again.
And for many people and communities, palliative care starts, as I said earlier, at birth, with terminal illness. So, other questions from our audience? As I said, this is a conversation. So, even if you have a thought, a half-baked question, please. Okay, I have some over here. How can industry partners better collaborate with or support patient advocacy groups? I think that's a really good question. Thank you so much. I see there are some questions for me as well. Okay, for a moment. Industry partners, how can they better collaborate with? Would any of our panelists want to weigh in on this? How can industry partners better collaborate with patients? And
Okay. Yeah, from my perspective is that for the industry partners to collaborate with patients is first they need to know what is the purpose of their research and what are they wanting to do and what is the intention of including the patients inside that research. You don't include patients there just to include it for that set. It has to have a very clear purpose. What is your philosophy, your guiding principle of your research? Because that is most important. And with that, if you are very clear with that, only then you can go out and reach out to the patients' organizations or through the community healthcare system or to the doctors or to the LKC, like people like Ling like that, and to get the patients who are interested in your research. But if you don't have a very clear philosophy behind why you want to engage patients, then it defeats the whole thing because it's not going to be translated. Their voice is not going to be translated in the research process.
Thank you so much, Emily. I have a question from someone in the audience who says, how can patients get themselves involved in clinical trials design? The question's for me, so I'm going to try and respond to that. What we've done is we reach out to, as DEBRA International, we reach out to clinicians, to researchers around the world who are working on this disorder. So we look at university websites and we look at whoever has expertise or interest. And typically clinical trials are run in research centers, in university hospitals, and by industry. So industry typically do not step in for clinical trial design. Or actually they do, but many of us, DEBRA is a very different case where we decide our own clinical trial design and we fund the trials. So I'm trying to straddle both. I think getting in touch with researchers and clinicians would be the first step, but I wonder if, Antoine, you want to weigh in on getting involved in clinical trial design.
Actually, industry, as many of pharmaceutical industries have put together patient engagement offices with expertise and programs on how to integrate patients in the design and conduct of trials, so that exists. And of course, it raises the question also of managing conflicts of interest, which is an issue, and also highlights the importance also of public funders and transparency in how we report where the money is coming from and who's doing what.
I would like to actually share that in Singapore, there is a lot of increasing interest in this area. I had been involved in discussions with the Singapore Clinical Research Institute. I think some of you are here today. And there is increasing interest of how can you bring in patients to co-design clinical trials, because we were involved in discussions, and in that session there were like pharmaceutical companies as well, and various stakeholders were involved. Not just pharmaceutical companies, but also hospitals and all that, because some clinical trials are not just led by industry itself. So there is increasing interest. So actually, frankly, if you look at the literature, how patients' involvement for clinical trials is not different from patients' involvement in medical research on what they can do and the whole research cycle. So I would say, yes, you can be involved. I think at this moment, open the doors, start conversations maybe with people who are already starting on this kind of work, be it some of the pharmaceutical companies. And I believe this thing is going to grow in Singapore. For sure.
Thank you, Ling. Questions from the audience? Anyone wants to put up a hand, or I will pick a question from here then. I think there's a very interesting question about caregivers. So there are two questions actually, both deal with similar issues. How can we support people who work, have carer duties, etc., to be involved in research? And this also sort of reminds me of some of the questions that our speakers raised on, Emily was saying, like, how do you just go and pick up a patient from the clinic, and the helicopter selection, I think you called it, right? Yeah, so how do, I think the question I'd like to broaden to is, how do we identify patients or caregivers who are so burdened already with other responsibilities, and how do we ensure that we are selecting, identifying, inviting the correct patient partner in research for sustainable outcomes? Would any of my panelists want to speak to that?
I think Dr. and John have already shared this very well with your partner. Yeah, because it has to be, you need to get one patient who is already inside it. And that patient will be the spokesperson, because the caregiver who had lived through the experience of caregiving will know how much. And that person will have the sensitivity. It's just like an antenna like that. They can see and scan who is suitable and who is still not suitable, who might be actually still going through the grief process. So there's no way that person is going to be involved productively without damaging the person. One thing I always said, that when you get patients to be involved as research partner, you have to ensure psychologically there is no harm done to them. Psychological safety is very important. Sorry, I'm from WHO. I had to emphasize on this.
And I think I will just add on to that. I mean, those are very good points that Emily has brought up. And I think in doing this work, it is something, we discussed this at lunch yesterday as well, a few of us, is that this is a relationship business to a certain extent, yeah? It's not something like I can just go and call out and I get 50 patients and come in, and then I just put you on the database. That is not the way how it works, right? We need to build that relationship, we need to build trust, and this was something that was brought up in Kelsey's workshop yesterday when we did something on PPI and about the key principles to build PPI. So you need to spend time as well to build that trust and relationship so that you can bring this forward. And in addition to that, I think you need to also provide the support system for especially people who are already busy. How do we enable them? How can we make that participation accessible to them so that they can participate in this? Yes, Kelsey, please.
be talking later, but one of the things is I actually think we do need some expression of interest processes and self-reflection questions for people to think about when they're ready to do the work, so that we do get a broad range of people. I know we should start with the people we know or the relationships we're building, but we exclude people from that process.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a great point by way of exclusion, especially we were also talking about how language is so exclusionary, right? And research is so dominated by English. So what happens to all the voices of people who don't speak English? Do we imply that they don't have the expertise or their experiences are not valid enough? So on that note, I've got at least another 10 questions that have been not answered, but we have run out of time. So may I invite the panelists to engage with the audience, but we'll have to wrap up so you can go. We stand between you and lunch, I think. So
No, it's me. I have something else to say. It's
Oh,
me
there
standing
we
between
go.
you and lunch. Don't worry.
So we'll stay back and we'll answer your questions, but over to you. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our panelists. We'll just do a group photo with you guys on stage. Great. So I hope you like what you have been hearing. And if so, there's more of this riveting stuff after lunch. But something else that is interesting is that here we are hosting the very first Open Voices Library at 3:30 p.m. And this is proudly supported by the Human Library Singapore. And in this session, just a very, very sneak peek, all right, you will get to hear from 10 human books. They are real people living with health conditions who will share their stories with you guys, the readers. And here is a sneak peek of how it will look like. So this collection of stories you can see later. And a lot of what we eventually end up finding out, it's not so much information that's given to us. Isn't it all about the questions that we ask? So I've been told there are 15 slots available that you can sign up to later. You can head out into reception to do so. And this is not easy to put into practice, by the way. It takes a lot of hard coordination behind the scenes. And it is actually led by two of our patient partners, Eileen and Hanin, together with volunteers from Human Library Singapore, Ajith and Kelly. So thank you to all of the organizers of this for your generous support, and to our patient partners who've actually been volunteered to be these books you will read later. A lot of excitement going on. I know you're super excited for lunch, so I will not hold you back. Remember, you need to be back here at 1:45, okay? Please enjoy lunch.